Have you ever been wounded by someone so deeply, words, actions, silence, that it felt like the very air was knocked from your lungs, only to watch them walk away like nothing happened? No apology, no explanation, no trace of remorse, just silence wrapped in confidence, as if your pain was invisible. It's one of the most confusing, heartbreaking experiences, to be hurt and then erased. And in that silence, questions scream, was it my fault? Did they even care? Am I overreacting? But what if I told you their silence speaks louder than their words ever could? What if the real reason they acted like nothing happened has nothing to do with your worth, but everything to do with their wounds, their pride, their blindness, or even the spiritual battles they don't know they're part of? Today we're going deep beneath the surface into the hidden truths few are willing to talk about. This is not just about betrayal. This is about the reason behind the mask. This is about reclaiming your peace, not through their apology, but through divine understanding, because you were never meant to live in the shadows of someone else's silence. It's time to see clearly what they could never say. When someone hurts you deeply and walks away without acknowledgement or remorse, it is often the result of spiritual blindness and a hardened heart. In the ancient scriptures, the concept of a hardened heart refers to a state where a person becomes desensitized to the voice of truth, the pull of conscience, and the presence of God. It is not simply an emotional callousness. It is a spiritual condition where the soul no longer recognizes the gravity of sin. This hardening doesn't happen overnight. It begins with small compromises, moments when conviction is ignored and truth is replaced by self-justification. Each time a person chooses to suppress guilt rather than confront it, their heart grows a little more calloused. Eventually, they lose sensitivity to the impact of their actions. Spiritual blindness follows, where they can no longer see the reality of their own behavior. They live in a delusion crafted by pride, pain, or denial. This blindness shields them from the emotional and moral consequences of their actions. That is why when they hurt others, they continue as if nothing happened, because in their eyes, either it wasn't a real offense or it wasn't their fault. They rewrite the script in their minds where they are the misunderstood one, the justified one, or the victim. Their inability to perceive the truth is not accidental but spiritual in nature. The scriptures say that when people repeatedly reject the light, they are handed over to their own delusions. They become blind to what should be obvious, deaf to what should be convicting. This blindness is not just about ignoring feelings. It's about a heart that has grown resistant to the very presence of God. When someone acts like they did nothing wrong after causing deep harm, they are revealing more about the condition of their spirit than their opinion of you. The tragedy is not that they acted like nothing happened. It's that their heart has grown so dull, they might genuinely not feel what they've done. They may rationalize it, blame circumstances, or twist the truth until it suits their narrative. This distortion is a product of spiritual darkness. They have become separated from the light that reveals sin and from the presence that draws repentance. And yet this blindness is often hidden beneath confidence. They may appear strong, even proud, but their behavior is a mask. The absence of guilt is not proof of innocence. It is evidence of distance. Distance from truth, from God, and from their own soul. Their silence does not make them victorious. It makes them blind. Their lack of remorse does not show maturity. It shows a spiritual wound that has been left untreated for so long that it no longer bleeds. What they did hurt you, but what's happening in them is a deeper tragedy. You feel the pain on the surface, but they carry the wound beneath. And unless light breaks through, they may never even know it. We are living in a time that was foreseen long ago, when the hearts of many would grow cold and love would be replaced by self-obsession. The spirit of the age is not merely a cultural trend. It is a force, subtle yet powerful, pulling people away from humility and toward a distorted love of self. Narcissism has become not just a trait, but a common identity, cloaked in confidence and independence, yet rooted in insecurity and brokenness. Those who hurt you and act like nothing happened are often so deeply entangled in this spirit that they genuinely do not see beyond themselves. Their world revolves around their feelings, their needs, their story. You may be bleeding from their words or actions, but in their mind, they are still the main character. This narcissistic spirit doesn't always look like arrogance. It can manifest as a refusal to accept blame, a twisting of events to protect self, repugning, or an inability to feel empathy. These individuals may see themselves as kind, reasonable, even righteous, but when their behavior causes harm, instead of acknowledging it, they deflect, withdraw, or act as if it never occurred. Their image of themselves cannot include being the one who causes pain, so they ignore the pain altogether. This is not a lack of awareness. It is a chosen blindness rooted in self-preservation. To acknowledge the damage would be to admit they are flawed, and that is something the narcissistic heart cannot endure. As the spirit of the age feeds this mindset, it tells people to follow their heart, to put themselves first, to cut off anything that disrupts their peace. And when this belief takes hold, accountability dies. Responsibility becomes toxic, and apologizing is seen as weakness. This is the real reason they can hurt you and continue with their life as if untouched, because their peace matters more to them than your healing. Their comfort is protected, even if your world is in pieces. They've learned to silence their conscience in favor of self-preservation. In such a climate, relationships are no longer sacred, but conditional. If you fit into their narrative, you're accepted. If not, you're replaced or ignored. The pain they caused you is inconvenient to their story, so they delete it. But the deletion doesn't mean it didn't happen. It only means they are living in a story where they refuse to be anything but the hero or the victim. That is the power of narcissism. It redefines truth until it suits the person, leaving others confused, wounded, and often doubting their own reality. The spirit is subtle, but its fruit is unmistakable. Detachment from empathy, absence of accountability, and an inflated sense of self. The one who hurt you may not be intentionally cruel, but they are caught in a deception that numbs their spirit and hardens their heart. They are not free. They are bound to the illusion of their own perfection, and until that illusion breaks, they will continue to walk past broken people without ever seeing the fragments they caused. There is a reason many who hurt others show no remorse. It often comes from a place of deep, unresolved pain within themselves. The ones who wound you are often the ones who've been wounded long before you met them. Their actions may seem cold, careless, even cruel, but behind that exterior is often a soul that never truly healed. Pain, when unacknowledged and unhealed, becomes toxic. It doesn't just sit quietly in the background. It festers, twists perspectives, and hardens hearts. Over time, that buried pain turns into behavior. They project what they could not process. What was once done to them, they now do to others, often without fully realizing it. This is the cycle of hurt people, hurting people. When someone grows up without love, without affirmation, without a safe place to process pain, they carry that brokenness into every connection they form. Their emotional compass becomes misaligned. What seems like cruelty is sometimes a warped form of self-protection. They strike before being struck. They push away before being abandoned. They hurt before being hurt. You see the action, but you don't always see the wound beneath it. It's easy to believe they're heartless, but more often they're hearts that have gone numb to avoid further damage. They may have experienced betrayal, neglect, emotional abuse, or constant rejection, and instead of healing from it, they buried it. But buried pain doesn't disappear. It influences how they see the world, how they interact, and how they love. Their inability to acknowledge your pain often mirrors their inability to acknowledge their own. When you confront them with your hurt, you're not just challenging what they did. You're forcing them to face everything they've been avoiding in themselves. And that is something many cannot do. It's too painful. So they escape the confrontation. They downplay your words. They shift blame. They pretend like nothing happened because pretending is easier than dealing with the truth of who they've become. For some, control becomes their defense. If they can't control how they feel, they try to control how others feel about them. They will manipulate emotions, rewrite events, and twist words, not because they're evil, but because they're desperate not to feel powerless again. This doesn't justify their behavior, but it explains it. Understanding where pain comes from doesn't remove the damage, but it can help you see the bigger picture. The one who hurt you may be living in survival mode, reacting from scars they never showed anyone. Their inability to validate your pain doesn't mean your pain isn't real. It means they are not equipped to meet you in it. And you were never meant to carry the weight of their healing. That burden is not yours. Recognizing that their behavior came from their own wounds can release you from the trap of taking it personally. It was never really about you. You became the mirror they could not face. And rather than confront the reflection, they broke the mirror. There is a spiritual truth that many overlook. Conviction cannot dwell where pride rules. The person who hurt you and acts like nothing happened may not be ignorant of their actions. They may simply be unwilling to humble themselves. Pride is not just arrogance. It is the elevation of self over truth. It is the refusal to see one's faults, the insistence on self-righteousness, and the denial of personal responsibility. When pride takes the throne of the heart, conviction has no place to speak. The voice that would call them to acknowledge their wrong is silenced by the louder voice of justification. Pride builds walls around the heart. It protects ego at all costs. To admit wrongdoing would mean to admit imperfection, and for the proud, that is unbearable. So they defend themselves, not just to you, but even more so within themselves. They rewrite the situation. They focus on your reaction, not their action. They cling to excuses. They shift blame. They diminish your pain to preserve their image. In their mind, if they can convince themselves they did nothing wrong, they don't have to carry the weight of guilt or the burden of repentance. It becomes easier to believe a lie than to confront the truth. Conviction is a holy discomfort, a stirring of the spirit that invites change. But when someone is ruled by pride, they resist that stirring. They harden their heart to it. They may know deep down that something was wrong, but they suppress it. They distract themselves, rationalize, or surround themselves with people who affirm their version of the story. They avoid silence because silence makes space for conviction to rise. Instead, they fill their lives with noise, with distractions, with reasons to stay numb. Pride ensures they never have to sit still long enough to feel the truth pressing against them. This is why some people can cause great harm and then move on as if it's untouched. It's not because what they did was small. It's because their pride is large. It overshadows empathy. It strangles self-awareness. It locks the door to remorse. And until that pride is broken, through crisis, through awakening, or by the grace of God, they will remain unmoved. Their heart will remain closed to the sorrow they caused. They may even see themselves as victims when confronted, flipping the narrative to avoid accountability. This is the power pride holds. It not only blinds the soul, but also deafens it to the cry of others. Conviction brings life, but only to the humble. Only the one willing to bow can be lifted. If they have not repented, it's not always because they don't know. They might know very well. But pride won't allow them to confess it. Pride tells them it's safer to forget, to ignore, to act as if nothing happened. And so they do, not realizing that in their effort to protect themselves, they are cutting themselves off from healing, restoration, and truth. The enemy is always operated through division and deception, and one of his most effective tactics is to divide and desensitize. When someone hurts you and walks away as if nothing happened, it is often more than just human weakness. It is a spiritual strategy at work. The adversary knows that division fractures not only relationships but hearts, and in the breaking of those bonds, isolation begins. Once isolated, the enemy whispers lies to both sides. To the one who caused the pain, he whispers justification, defense, and indifference. To the one who was hurt, he stirs bitterness, self-doubt, and anger. In doing so, he separates them from one another and distances both from healing. The strategy of division begins with offense. A small wound left unchecked grows into resentment. An unspoken word turns into a festering silence. Instead of reconciliation, the offended becomes consumed by the weight of what was done, while the offender becomes numb to its reality. This isn't accidental. The enemy darkens the conscience of the one who hurt you so that they feel no urgency to make things right. He dulls their empathy and inflates their pride so they remain emotionally detached. What should feel wrong to them begins to feel normal. They become desensitized to the effects of their actions, unable to sense the pain they've caused. This desensitization is a spiritual deadening. The longer they avoid the truth, the more comfortable they become in the lie. It's not that they forget what happened. It's that the memory no longer stirs conviction. The enemy keeps them so distracted and so self-synced that they become emotionally unreachable. At the same time, he magnifies your pain. He reminds you of every word, every silence, every betrayal. He makes the wound fresh again and again. So you remain trapped in cycles of hurt, replaying what they did, waiting for closure that may never come. This is how division becomes permanent. One side numb, the other side bleeding. But the deeper tactic is not just to divide you from another person. It is to divide you from your own peace and from God's presence. The enemy knows if he can keep your heart consumed with what they didn't say, what they didn't do, or how they moved on, then he can steal your focus from the one who heals. He doesn't just want to cause offense. He wants to imprison you in it. And he uses their silence as a weapon, their apathy as fuel, knowing that the longer you wait for them to fix what they broke, the longer you'll remain broken. The enemy thrives in unresolved conflict. He builds strongholds in silence, sets traps in blame, and turns wounds into walls. The one who hurt you may have no idea they're being used in this way. They may not even see the destruction in their wake. But make no mistake, there is a spiritual war beneath every personal pain, and it's not just about the people involved. It's about the territory of your heart. If the enemy can keep that wounded and divided, he knows he can stop healing from taking root. The healing you need is not dependent on the apology you never received. Many wait for closure, for justice, for the one who hurt them to return with remorse, with sorrow, with a broken heart seeking forgiveness. But what if that never comes? What if they move on, unrepentant and unchanged? Healing cannot be chained to their recognition of your pain. It must begin in a higher place, one that doesn't shift with the will of others. When you tie your healing to their apology, you surrender your peace into their hands. You remain bound to their choices, stuck in the waiting room of closure that may never open its doors. The truth is, God never asked you to wait for them. Healing is not about what they do, it's about what you release. Forgiveness is not saying that what happened was right, nor does it minimize the wound. It simply means you are no longer giving your power to the one who hurt you. You are not letting them occupy your thoughts, your emotions, or your spirit. You are not demanding they see your pain before you can breathe again. You are choosing to live, to rise, and to walk forward, even if they never look back. There is something sacred about surrendering what was never yours to fix. You cannot force someone to see what they're unwilling to face. You cannot carry the weight of their conviction. And the longer you wait for their repentance, the more you risk letting their silence become your prison. Some people are too broken to apologize. Others are too proud. And still others are too unaware. But none of those reasons are greater than the healing power that comes when you lay your pain before God and say, I let it go, not because it didn't hurt, but because you are choosing freedom. God meets you at the point of surrender, not revenge. He begins healing the moment you stop tying your restoration to their realization. And when you forgive, you open the door to a healing that is no longer dependent on them, but rooted in divine strength. Forgiveness is not a one-time feeling. It's a decision repeated each time the memory returns. Each time you choose peace over bitterness, grace over anger, you heal a little more. That is where your power lies, not in changing them, but in refusing to let them change you. They may never say the words you deserve to hear. They may never admit what they did. But your healing is not delayed by their silence. God does not need their apology to begin your restoration. He only needs your yes to let go, your yes to trust him with the justice, your yes to move forward, even if they remain unchanged. The moment you release them, you are no longer the victim, you become the overcomer. Their silence no longer has a voice in your story. because your healing began the moment you stopped waiting and started choosing. So now you see, the ones who hurt you and acted like nothing happened were never the measure of your worth, your healing, or your future. Their silence wasn't your failure. It was their blindness. Their lack of remorse wasn't proof you weren't wounded. It was proof they were already wounded long before they reached you. Whether it was pride, pain, spiritual darkness, or the lies of the enemy, their inability to acknowledge the truth only revealed the condition of their own heart, not yours. But you are not bound to their actions, their decisions, or their growth. You are not waiting on their apology to begin your healing. Your peace does not depend on their awakening. You were never meant to carry their silence as your identity. What they ignored, God saw. What they dismissed, heaven recorded. And where they fell silent, the voice of God rises with healing, justice, and restoration. You don't need them to validate your pain. You only need to release it. Because freedom doesn't come when they say sorry. It comes when you stop waiting and start walking forward. And when you do, you step into the life they could never take from you, whole, healed, and unshaken.